Welcome back, everyone. I want to introduce you to a very special lady that I met through Isabella Ma, Steak and Butter Gal, who I've had before on the channel for an interview. This is Dani Conway. We met in her Steak and Butter gang, Bella's gang, and I have to say, there's so many people that I've never heard of before, never met, that I absolutely have fallen in love with. And Dani is one of those people. She is so knowledgeable and so understanding, empathetic, and yet she'll tell you exactly what you need to hear in the way you need to hear it. So I have invited her to come on today so that we can just chat about all kinds of stuff. I want you to hear her story and learn a little bit about her, why she's worth listening to, because she's, knows a few things here and there. So Dani, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. And please tell us about yourself.
Thanks so much, Amy, for having me. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you in the meetings, and we've had a few chances to chat outside and DMs, and I had you on my IG Live, which was awesome. So I just appreciate you having me on. I'm Dani Conway, and I started down the path of low carb, keto, carnivore almost 15 years now. So I was 65 pounds overweight. I struggled with yo-yo dieting for many years in my late teens and early 20s, or late teens and 20s. And I was just tired of the yo-yo, of the restriction, of the 1,200 calorie diets, trying to eat as little as I could and work out as much as I could, doing hours of cardio and spin classes and, leading to getting hungrier and hungrier and having more and more food cravings and digestive problems and hormone imbalances. And I was only in my 20s. So it was very frustrating time because I was like here in my early adult life and feeling kind of crappy. Going to the doctor, was told my blood work was normal. It must be in my head. There's nothing wrong with me. And just, so many things sort of just, again, led me down a path looking for something different. And so that's when I sort of just fell onto like a low carb way of eating. I should say higher fat, higher protein. I didn't really even know what it was called, like low carb, keto. Like I just didn't know about those at that point. There was no social media, there was no YouTube channels, there was no Facebook pages, Instagram pages, people to follow or anything like that. There might have been, but if there was, I didn't know about any of that. And I just started to eat more meat, eat more cheese, and it became easier and easier to cut out the higher carb, refined, starchy type foods that I was eating on, the typical Weight Watchers, counting points. Like you could eat as many chocolate chip cookies as you wanted, as long as it was within a certain amount of points, right? So what I, started to notice was that, one of my probably two biggest complaints aside from the weight were excessive hunger and food cravings. Not so much sugar cravings, but food cravings, ice cream cravings. Looking back, I say like there was no shortage of ice cream going on in my body, but it was, nutrient depletion, definitely. So again, that just sent me looking for something different. I started to experiment and pretty much kind of unraveled from there in terms of the low carb evolution, low carb, keto, and then into carnivore, a few years later.
I love that you figured it out all on your own. Absolutely. No one told you anything. There was no, the space was out there 20 some odd years ago, but there were so few of them. And if you were lucky enough to find them, fantastic. But that is so cool that you just kind of were like, I'm going to try this. Yeah, I love that. So what is your profession now? And what do you do about helping other people learn about this way of eating?
So in a nutshell, I holistic nutritionist and functional medicine practitioner. And so what that basically means is that I focus on helping my clients get to the root cause of whatever their imbalances are. So from hormone imbalances, digestive issues, I have a food first approach. So just, how I started with changing the food that I ate first to get into the right balance that I needed for my body and my metabolism, that's my approach with my clients as well. So we always address food, nutrients, making sure that they're getting, enough of the animal-based foods, proteins, fats. And then, I don't have a one size fits all approach. So not all my clients are carnivore, not all of them are keto. They all don't necessarily have a label, but what we do is figure out that balance of macros, proteins, fats, and carbs, if they are, if they're going to have carbs, that works for their body and their metabolism, that is sustainable for them for the long run. So, that's a really important piece of the puzzle. That's what has been important for me to maintain this way of eating for so long. But ultimately is, helping clients to do the same thing. And then after working on the food first part, then we get into rebalancing hormones and gut health through various functional testing, looking for functional imbalances, root cause of constipation, diarrhea, stomach aches, bloating, gas, all the things, indigestion, all the things that nobody wants to talk about. Well, sometimes some people want to talk about it, but basically the things that you could go and get like an over-the-counter pill for. But we all know that that's not a solution. That's just a Band-Aid. And eventually those over-the-counter things will stop working and leave you with the same symptoms that you tried to abate in the first place.
Yeah, very much so. So when you talk about gut health, there's a lot of people who don't even know what that means, and they could be suffering from improper gut balances and their microbiome, and they need to work on their gut health, but they don't even know what that looks like. So for those people, can you kind of spell it out a little bit? What are we looking for? What are some symptoms? What can come from balancing your gut microbiome? Things like that.
Yeah. So as far as symptoms go, the obvious ones that I just mentioned, but we'll just talk about those again because I tell my clients, like, we talk about poop, we talk about everything. There's no subjects that are off limits. But everything from indigestion, nausea, stomach aches, bloating, gas, diarrhea, constipation, anxiety and depression are also digestive issues. A lot of people don't think of those as digestive issues, but they are. They are definitely rooted in digestion. Thyroid imbalances can be rooted in digestion. Changes in appetite, like to excessive hunger, like I told you I struggled with, to not having enough hunger. So we need to have a balance. Too much or too little, they both can have negative effects. So as far as fixing those type of issues, it really depends on the person. So again, food first, making sure that they have the right balance of macronutrients, proteins, fats, and then carbs, that they're going to be eating carbs. And then from there, looking at things like absorption or malabsorption, being able to absorb your nutrients, that's like first and foremost. Healing the gut means reducing inflammation, making sure that the bacterial balance is where it should be. So we hear a lot about the terms like the good bacteria, the bad bacteria. And really an imbalance, even with what's supposed to be there, can cause problems and symptoms. To really looking for underlying bacterial or like negative bacteria, pathogens, things like that. All of those sort of go into the realm of digestive health and gut healing.
So what kind of tests could people be getting to find out whether or not they are where they should be, or if they need to work on it a little bit?
So there's a handful of tests that can be helpful. I use a specific stool test in my practice where it's a poop test. What we get to look for with the stool testing is various bacteria overgrowth, opportunistic bacteria, candida, which many people can be familiar with hearing that term, candida, or fungal overgrowth. And then things like H. pylori, different parasites, worms, to be honest, like all of these things can cause really problematic underlying symptoms that can be, can make you really, really uncomfortable. What the test also looks for is digestive function. So our enzyme production, gluten, gliadin sensitivity, different inflammatory markers. So all these things can be really, really key to, again, getting to the root cause and then rebalancing the digestive health so that you can eliminate a lot of those symptoms.
So You keep bringing up poop, and I'm just going to stay on the poop subject here.
Okay, sure.
Just got to. Um, a lot of people who, when they go carnivore, experience, especially the diarrhea
Yeah.
for a while. And I've heard some people in this space that say, you know, oh, it can take you like a year to get over it. It should only take you 2 weeks. Anything over that is a problem. What do you have to say about that? Because if there's someone who's had it for, you know, a week or two and they're starting to get a little panicky, what do you think, and what have you found in your practice with your clients is normal? I say that with quotations. So what is your opinion on diarrhea and carnivore?
Yum, yum. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so the more imbalanced your gut is prior to going carnivore, the longer the potential is for you to have a problem with diarrhea after switching over to carnivore. So that's one thing to take into consideration. It can be from a low enzyme production. It can be from low HCl, which is hydrochloric acid production. It can be a problem that's related to bile function and gallbladder. Those are kind of like I would say, I don't want to say the most popular, because I don't want everyone to just automatically think if I have diarrhea, I need to have more enzymes or something like that. But then beyond that, it's, are there foods that are carnivore that you're sensitive to, right? Food sensitivities are still a symptom of an underlying problem. They're not the end all be all. Is someone struggling with histamine issues? So histamine issues are still a leaky gut problem. Still have to heal the gut for that. So there's so many facets of digestion that could potentially be causing diarrhea. That there's not going to be a one size fits all answer in terms of, X, Y, and Z is going to fix it, or it should be 2 weeks, 4 months, or 6 months. Electrolytes, some people that don't have enough minerals, they add electrolytes and that fixes their diarrhea problem like that. Others, if they add too much sodium, that's going to flush their system a little bit too much. So a lot of these things need to be experimental in terms of what somebody tries to alleviate the problem. Some people do need to, look at outside sources aside, like the testing I mentioned, or figuring out bacterial imbalances, possibly temporarily adding some probiotics to get things back into balance. That's another topic that's a little bit controversial on carnivore for sure. Butyrate, that's something that we find in butter. Like butter is very rich in something called butyrate, which is short chain fatty acids that help to feed the good bacteria in the gut, in the colon. But if somebody can't tolerate a lot of butter, if someone is having a malabsorption of nutrients issue, then are they really absorbing the butyrate that they're taking in via food? So there's just so many different avenues and things to consider with our question is on diarrhea, but really with any type of symptoms that somebody is going through.
Yeah, that's one question that I hear more often than not. How long? Right. When will I see results? And I feel so bad because I wish I could tell people exactly how long. I can tell you how long it was for me, but you're not me. And I can tell you how long it was for the other person who told me how long it was for them, but we're all so different, and your underlying conditions are not my underlying conditions. And there's so many factors into it. And so my answer has started to become as long as it takes. That's why you have to have a good why. I want to lose 30 pounds before my sister's wedding is generally not a good why. Because if you don't lose 30 pounds before your sister's wedding, then you're not going to stick to it. And so finding that good why and being willing to wait it out and loving yourself through the process as long as it takes, that is so very important, because for some people, it is a very long, hard journey to find health for them. And
it was, if I can just comment on this, because it took me over a year to lose 65 pounds. There's people now that are losing 50 pounds in 4 to 5 months. And the reality is that's not the norm, number one. Number two is that we hear more, just because we hear more stories on social media about somebody who lost 50 pounds in 4 months, doesn't mean that the entire population that is trying to lose weight loses 50 pounds in 4 months. So I have to say that first. Like I said, it took me over a year to drop 65. And then I continued to kind of biohack my body, be an N=1 experiment, and then continue to change body composition after that for, muscle gain, and again, changing body composition for body type goals, making sure I was eating enough. Like there's just so many things that fall into this. And it just wasn't about that initial weight loss. It just was so much, it just continued on after that, which is, there was no, like you said earlier, there's no like one answer, right? So it was experimental for me, and then being able to take the things that I learn and use them in my practice, and in, with my one-on-one clients, and in the group coaching that I do as well. I mean, it's very, very valuable. So,
well, and then what worked 10 years ago isn't
totally
going to work right now.
Yeah. I mean, I look at, I know that we don't like to talk about treats, right? Keto treats, because we all have probably had too many in our life. But, the reason I'm bringing this up is because when I started doing this 15 years ago, there was no fat bomb recipes. There was no keto treats. There was no alternative. Stevia, of course, was around, but the sweeteners that we know of today for various recipes, they weren't really popular back then. So I could look back at that time and say, geez, if I had all of these things 15 years ago, how much faster would I have gotten to my results? But the reality is that all of that experience that I had getting there, that's what really has like kept me in the trenches to be able to help others stay in the trenches to get where they want to go to.
I love, you have so many little sayings and tweaks and things like that that I find completely invaluable. Like someone will ask a question, and I love, and I'm going to let you explain it. When someone says, I fell off the wagon, and, I really want this one thing, but I know I can't have it. What do you say to them?
So I love this because this is like one of my favorite tools. I've used this myself hundreds of times. I've taught this in my group coaching programs. I've used this with my one-on-one clients. So basically, when we fall off the wagon and have a treat of some kind, whether it's a keto treat or not a keto treat, what is our first, the first thing that we tell ourselves the next day is, we can't have that anymore. Stop eating that. Don't have that. The guilt sets in. It's like a whole cascade of stress that we put on our body emotionally that affects us. So whenever we tell ourselves not to do something or not to have something, it's almost like you can just assume that as soon as you say not to do that, that you're just what are you going to want to do? You're going to want to go do that thing, right? So rather than tell yourself you can't have that, just say to yourself, if I want that, I can just have it tomorrow. If I want it, I can have it tomorrow. So you're not telling yourself no, you're just sort of deflating the stress and the deprivation, because it's really that deprivation that can cause us to kind of spiral into that that downward, like, no, and stress and hormonal cascade and all of that. But just by saying, if I want that thing, I can have it tomorrow. Eventually, then tomorrow comes and you say, if I want that thing, I can have it tomorrow. So eventually the idea is that tomorrow never comes because you end up forgetting about it. And I can tell you, I've used this myself, and it's I know you might, your watchers might be thinking like, okay, I don't think I would forget about it, but trust me, you will. And here's the thing, if you don't forget about it after 4 or 5 days, then choose to have the thing. But if you choose to have it mindfully, then you get to just go on with your life and not stress about it, and not fast because of it as a punishment, and all the crazy things that we as women, or men, I'm sure, do if we fall off with a treat or something. So it's just really a way to stop saying no to yourself, and don't know, like, all of that kind of has a real emotional effect and spiral, affects the cortisol, hormones, all of that.
Yeah, I love that. And then the craving is not what one. Even if you do have that treat 4 or 5 a week, 7 days down the road, even if you do have it, the craving isn't the one that made you had it immediately. You kept it at bay and then you made the choice. Okay, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have it. And there are some people who can have a keto treat or something like that once a week and be fine.
Right.
There are some who will have it once and then have it again and again, and they will roll down a very slippery slope.
Right.
And knowing which one you are you an abstainer or are you a moderator?
Right. Exactly.
Experimenting on yourself, and can you explain the two, just in case that no one's ever heard of abstaining or moderating? What's the difference between the two?
Yeah, so that's a great question because, like Amy just said, identifying and knowing yourself and your personality is one of the most, important tools to keep in your toolbox for success, regardless of whatever your goals are, whether it's weight loss, fat loss, body composition, healing, digestion, hormones, whatever it is. So an abstainer is someone who must abstain or stop eating whatever it is so that they can stay successful. A moderator is someone who can have a little bit of something here and there. They might be able to have a little bit of sweetener or a little bit of stevia, a treat once a week, once a month. And that doesn't necessarily derail all of their progress in terms of setting them on a downward spiral to then have all of the treats there, thereafter. So really determining whether you are someone who should abstain, meaning not have that thing, and or can you be somebody who moderates it? I never, as a little side note, I never cared for the term moderation. And that being said, I will just say, full disclosure, I am a moderator with a lot of things. But the reason I don't like the term moderation is because it's been overused in the diet industry so much, and it becomes an excuse for somebody to have whatever that is. So, I can have that in moderation. I don't want to restrict myself. And then moderation turns into once a week, twice a week. And then they wonder why they're not getting the results they're looking for and why their gut's not healing and why they can't sleep at night and the different things that are affecting their symptoms. And that's my one sort of caveat problem with moderation. Now, does that mean someone still can't be a moderator and be successful? No, it's just the context of the term moderation, I think, has become abused in the diet industry. And that's where we just need to be careful as moderators.
And that's very true. You actually brought it up at the beginning with Weight Watchers. You
Mm-hmm.
can have all of these cookies as long as it fits in your point category, which is the same thing as moderation. So I completely understand that. I can actually get behind that it really has been an abused word, and it's almost changed the meaning that we're going for, and it's been manipulated on several levels. I think you're absolutely right on that.
100%. So I needed to say something. I want to say something about the Weight Watchers example, because this is what I want everyone to think of. So there's possibly someone might see this video who doesn't know much about carnivore. Maybe they are still trying to do the Weight Watchers route, and maybe they're struggling with cravings, excessive hunger, various blood sugar dysregulation type symptoms, which would be things like getting tired after a meal, noticing that you get hungry a couple hours, later, meaning that your meal wasn't quite right for you. Maybe you fall asleep okay, but you wake up around 2 or 3 a.m. chronically. Those are just a couple of the symptoms that could indicate some blood sugar dysregulation. But the point of what I wanted to share is that, so with Weight Watchers, like we said, you count points and you can basically eat 2 things that have the same point value no matter what they are. So here's the example I want to give is that on one hand, we could have a chicken thigh that, let's say, is 250 calories. And sorry, I'm going to bring up the numbers. So just bear with me on the examples here. So we have a chicken thigh that's 250 calories. And now we have 2 chocolate chip cookies that are also 250 calories. So from a point perspective, they both might be 12 points, and somebody could have that if, that's going to be whatever they're going to choose to have for their 12 points for that day. But what happens is the chicken thigh gives us probably about 20 grams of protein, raises our blood levels of amino acids, and does a lot of other things to help us cognitively with our satiety, with muscle building, if, someone's trying to change body composition. And then we have these two cookies that might seem obvious not to eat the cookies, but why we need to not eat the cookies or choose that at least for the 12 points is because it's going to raise what? Our blood sugar. What's going to happen? Our insulin. What's going to happen? Fat storage. And then a whole other host of cascade of things that happen from blood sugar and insulin rising that are not metabolically healthy.
Yeah, and they've put the chicken thigh and the cookies on the same level. They've said that they are of equal importance to each other. And honestly, that's kind of what's happened with like the bulletproof coffees. Because everyone is like, oh, I drink my bulletproof coffee. It's got all this wonderful fat in it, and it's going to give me all this energy, and it's going to keep me full forever. Well, if you actually look at the bulletproof coffee, it's got 450 calories in it. I mean, that is a lot of calories. And while, yes, MCT oil and butter and everything else that it probably is made with are good oils and good fats, if you look at 6 or 7 eggs, depending on the size of your egg, that is also 450 calories. But what is the difference between the nutrition in the egg versus just the nutrition in the fat? Because you're not getting the same amount from both of them.
Right. And a lot of what I see with women who come to me that have been on keto for a long time that are complaining that their hair is falling out and they're losing muscle. So the hair loss is a really big one, but also muscle loss, or they haven't been able to lose fat. So that's an indication that they haven't been able to change body composition. So how do we change body composition? We need to build more muscle in order to change our body composition ratios. But my whole point was going back to the bulletproof coffee is that, some people will add collagen, some people don't, but originally it's, butter, coffee, and MCT oil, which again, can be helpful for cognition in the moment. But I don't care what anyone says, you're breaking a fast with butter and MCT oil. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that what's missing is so that's a meal. And now people, women especially are missing 20 to 30 grams of protein that they could be having with their meal that would, like you said, the eggs, choline, vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin K, all of those nutrients that we could be getting from that fat source from the yolk, as well as the whole egg if someone tolerates the whole egg, or, adding a protein source, a better protein source with the bulletproof coffee. That is just, that's just something that I see so often as women not getting enough protein on keto. Then they're drinking bulletproof coffee. Then their appetite is gone for, till later in the day. But nutritionally, that's not what is the best approach. So I can't tell you how many women we've either changed up their bulletproof recipe if they really, really don't want to give it up, or we just sort of switch things around a little bit and then they start losing fat, losing weight because they're getting the right nutrients on a daily basis.
And then not drinking your calories.
Oh, yes.
In some cases, it's better to chew them because then you activate hormones that need to be activated. Right. So go ahead.
No, I totally agree. I mean, and, on that one, it absolutely. And, full disclosure, from having a history of so many digestive issues, I still do smoothies once in a while, because it is better. It just feels better on my digestion earlier in the day with my schedule from workouts to riding my horse. And I just can't eat a ribeye in the morning before I go ride. So I've had to come up with ways that work for me, that keep me within, carnivore and low carb and, all of that fuel my body correctly, that, are okay on my stomach, don't cause bloating or other negative symptoms, so that I can, do the things I want to do, and then I eat, complete, full meat meals, later in the day.
And you are very healthy now. You have been low carb for, like you said, 15 years.
Almost,
And
yeah.
so when you can, have protein shakes in the morning, so many people look at you and go, oh, well, that's, a hypocrite. And it's like, no, it's what works for you right now.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up, because it's a question I get a lot. Like, do I believe in protein powder? And so let's just talk about this for a second, because
Oh, yeah.
I think it's important. So it depends on the person. I mean, like we've been talking about, there's no one size fits all. And, when you have someone that is leaky gut, right? They've got tons of GI issues. They might not be able to tolerate eating meat 3 times a day. We have to look at it in the context of the person. I have some clients, this might sound funny, but some clients I have them do like bone broth smoothies. So they are using real bone broth. If they can tolerate eggs, I have them put real eggs, with a protein powder that's beef protein, high quality, limited ingredient. And this is part of somebody's healing protocol. This is part of getting them to a place where they can eat a ribeye 2 or 3 times a day. And so, for me, someone might say, well, why are you still doing smoothies? Because that's what feels the best in my body. And I still eat almost 2 pounds of meat on some days. So it, depends on where I am in my cycle and what's going on hormonally and all of that stuff.
Yeah. And you got to just stay flexible, because what works now may not work later. And
Right. Well, even in the seasons, right? So,
yes,
we hear so much, there's so much just in the food industry about eating seasonally, which usually means like different fruits and vegetables in the wintertime than in the summertime and things like that. Well, especially on carnivore, since we're not really eating a lot of fibrous foods like that, we have to look at eating seasonally a little bit differently. So that might mean in the wintertime, that might mean more soups, more broths, more carnivore based chili type things, not using beans, of course, but there's other ways that you could do it. In the summertime, maybe someone does tolerate cold meats a little bit better in the summertime. Just being creative and just changing things up in the season, which also helps with variety and sticking to this a little bit longer as well.
and I think that the fat and protein ratio also plays a part.
Yes. Oh, I was going to say that too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Definitely. In the wintertime, some people might find themselves craving more fats. And then sometimes in the summertime, some can tolerate the same amount in the summer and the winter, but then in the summertime, sometimes people tend to need like lower amounts, or they can go leaner in the summertime. And by leaner, I don't mean only like lean proteins. I just mean a little bit lower of fat overall.
Yeah. And if you think about it, I mean, it makes sense biologically, because animals are nice and fat in the winter. So when we would go kill animals in the winter, they would be very fatty.
Right.
And then come summertime, everyone's leaned out. They've had their babies in the spring, so they're nursing their babies now. So the moms are much skinnier. They don't have as much fat on them. And that's the type of animals that we would eat. And we change seasonally, and listening to your body at every point in time and trying to, not get yourself locked into this box and thinking this is my happy place forever, because it's not.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And the other thing that happens is, as somebody heals their body, different foods are going to be more appealing sometimes than other times. So that's also a part of the puzzle too, which of course is great, because some people go from needing to be a little bit more limited when they start with their options. And going on a healing journey as well, maybe they're able to add eggs or dairy back in if they had to take them out. Like I just had a client the other day who actually came back sensitive on a test, on the sensitivity test that I use, to beef and lamb. So it's yes, it's a bummer. And we have to realize that this is the example of sometimes people can be sensitive to carnivore foods that we don't know about, that we need, it can be such a good, valuable tool to find out, because if she tried the lion diet, beef, salt, and water, that would be super inflammatory for her. And we don't think about those little nuances. So
I tried. Oh my gosh. I tried the lion diet. I tried beef, salt, and water. I still to this day don't know if it was the one cow or if it was just way too much cow because I, for 2 days, was covered head to toe in hives.
oh
I
my
couldn't,
goodness.
I couldn't stop itching. It was ridiculous. We got a brand new breed of cow. We got a Holstein and we had it slaughtered and processed at a different location. And they said no hormones, no antibiotics, no nothing. They said that it was all processed cleanly. But after both Richard and I, for 3 days, ate nothing but beef. And so we were eating 2, maybe even 3 ribeyes a day. And it was this new cow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I woke up the next morning, my neck was super stiff. I had a massive headache and I was covered in red hives and mostly on my legs. And they didn't show up really until I got into the water. I took a bath that night because I was so itchy. I couldn't stop. So I put some essential oils in the bath water, climbed in, and my legs just lit up like fireworks. And I was like, what is this? And so the next day I got up, I tried to eat a steak. I was gagging on it. I couldn't even swallow it. And then later on that day, my whole body, everything, just exploded in white hives. And I was like, okay. Wow. I mean, I live in Wisconsin. We've got ticks here. So it's like, okay, could it be Lyme disease? Could it be alpha-gal? What the heck is going on? So I went super clean. I got rid of all dairy. I got rid of all mammals. I stuck with just birds and eggs for like a week. And I was good. All the inflammation went down. My neck, I could turn it, I could look, I'm like, even driving, I couldn't even drive because I couldn't check my blind spot properly. So the hives went away within like 2 or 3 days. And then all the inflammation went down. And I did eventually bring beef back in and I brought pork back in. But if I have too much of either one of those, I start to have symptoms again. So I wonder if I'm one of those people who is just sensitive to beef and I can only handle so much.
Right.
Whether or not I eat it is a good idea, I haven't figured out yet. So yeah, fun times. I completely understand that. I tried the lion diet. It bit me in the butt. It didn't go well.
No lion for you.
Nope. So I eat a lot of chicken. I eat a lot of turkey, a lot of eggs, things like that. I'm able to handle dairy. Pork seems to be okay, but I'll get to a point with bacon where I'm like, I can't eat anymore. So I should probably do a food sensitivity test or something like that. It might be a good idea.
Anytime, just let me know.
I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna be like, okay, and then I'll let everyone know what my results are because maybe it's all in my head and I'm perfectly fine with beef. Maybe it was just that one stinking cow.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different types of food sensitivities too. Well, so many. There's 3 or 4 different types of food sensitivities as well. So that's something else to consider too. They're just with that particular situation, there could have been, so many things.
I did have a suspicious tick bite and I got tested for Lyme and alpha-gal. But come to find out that the test that I had can be up to 70% false negative.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'm already on, a pretty darn uninflammatory diet. And, yeah, we'll just see. But anyways, there is one thing you brought up and it can be such a sticky swamp, but I have to go back to it because I love stirring the pot. Calories.
Yeah.
Do you believe in counting calories? Do you think it's a good idea? Is it a bad idea? And I'm sure that your answer is that everyone should do the exact same thing.
Never. Okay. So I do, this is just another question that I honestly love because it depends on the person. So, these days the thing is tracking macros. Macros are proteins, carbs, and fats. Macros is short for macronutrients for anyone who may not know or be familiar. And it basically means how much, calories or energy. When I do coach clients, I coach them on total energy. If we want to have enough energy throughout the day, we need to take in enough energy in order to be able to expend that energy. So that being said, I do, I've tracked macros. It actually helped me get to where I am now. But when I say that, there's a little couple caveats, and that is it helped me to learn to be able to eat enough on a daily basis because I did come from such a restriction dieting background. So when I tracked, it was to make sure that I was eating a minimum of 17 to 1800 calories per day. And it didn't matter. It wasn't really about not going under and it didn't matter if I went over. In fact, I actually discovered that if I don't eat about 2000, I don't sleep very well. So my experience with tracking, yes, it helped me, and it's not for what most people are doing with tracking or counting is, trying to eat as little as possible. And that being said, it's actually one of the reasons why I developed my own macro formula that I use with my clients quite a few years ago, is because most of the formulas out there make recommendations that are too low for active women who want balanced hormones and balanced gut health. So the whole concept of tracking for me and my practice with my clients is about making sure that they're eating enough on a daily basis, making sure they're getting enough protein, enough fat, and then the carbs, of course, to balance depending on what approach, what we just discover works best for their body.
Oh, I love that you brought up the hormones. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people who are concerned that eating too much protein is going to mess with their hormones in negative ways. And so carnivore couldn't possibly fix hormones and regulate them. So I'm going to let you go off on that tangent now.
Yeah. So, as far as hormones go, I mean, fat and protein are the building blocks for hormones. Hormones are synthesized from cholesterol. If we thought about like a pyramid, and cholesterol would be at the top, and then all of the different hormones, especially steroid hormones, like your sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, adrenal hormones from cortisol, DHEA, all of those are considered steroid hormones, and they are made from cholesterol. And then, proteins are building blocks for neurotransmitters, which are our brain chemistry. And there's a connection with hormones and brain chemistry, right? So all of these, we have to have the perfect storm of animal fats and protein in order to have balanced neurotransmitters, which basically is a fancy way to have balanced moods and no anxiety and no depression and all of that. And then balanced hormones, of course, to have, balanced menstruation for women, testosterone for men, and all the things that go into balancing hormones on a daily and monthly basis for both men and women.
And that's one thing that I experienced myself. Well, when I went keto, I did not eat enough protein, not nearly. And I lost over half of my hair, which is one of the reasons that I chopped it all off, because it used to be down to the middle of my back. And it got so thin because I was not eating my original training and education in keto was that you have to focus on the 7 to 10 cups of vegetables before you even look at the meat, because you have to get your vitamins and minerals and nutrients in first. I know, don't fall out of your chair, please.
I won't.
So, oh my gosh, that's where, and I'm glad that I did it, because now I have a story. I have the experience. I've not gotten back all of my hair. I don't know that I ever will, because female pattern baldness does run in my family very strongly on both sides. And so I didn't eat nearly enough protein. With the amount of fat that I was eating and the protein that I was eating, I was able to get off all of my anti-anxiety and antidepressants. So that was a huge step in the right direction. But when I started to kind of slip back into that anxious mode, when we lost a family member, I started to really worry all the time about my kids. And it wasn't natural. And I knew the feeling, and I knew where I was heading, and I didn't want that. And I had heard that carnivore was the ultimate mental clarity diet.
Right.
And I went, okay, if I want to fix the anxiety and the depression, I'm going to just trust that the next obvious step is go from keto to carnivore. And I was already pretty close anyways. So I just cut all the veggies out. I was going to wait until January. Richard and I were going to do it together. And then with the death in the family, I went, I'm not waiting So it's November and I'm doing it now. And he was like, okay, absolutely, whatever you think you need to do. And
Right.
it worked. I upped the protein tremendously. I did lots of butter and lots of fat. I could never do the fat on the steaks,
Right.
or gag on it. So I added lots of butter and things like that. And it worked. And so, for me, the balancing the hormones, carnivore was the key. And so it makes sense, hearing that, the cholesterol is up here at the top
Right.
and everything flows down, and getting people to understand that everyone fears cholesterol. They're all so worried about high numbers on cholesterol, when you're in ketosis. And it's like, but I don't think anyone quite understands how your body is different when you run in ketosis and when we eat the way that we do. Our bodies don't fit into the standard American diet
Right.
numbers, and LDL specifically has been demonized when it's actually showing to be protective against Alzheimer's and dementia and strokes and things like that up in our brains. And yet we're trying to get it as low as we possibly can.
Right.
So I think that there's a lot more that needs to go into this. I love people like Dave Feldman and Ivor Cummins, and they're looking at this cholesterol conundrum. And it's like, yeah, there's so much more to the story than what we're being told.
Oh, for sure. And I do want to say, because you were just talking a couple minutes ago about the vegetables and the low protein. And so, the reality is that carnivore isn't for everyone, and keto is okay for many people, and vegetables are okay for many people. So when Amy talks about you know, too high vegetables, 8 to 10 cups of vegetables, to the low amount of protein that somebody's eating, there's nothing wrong with the veggies for some people if they're tolerable. The thing is that we need to make sure that those same people are getting the right amount of protein and fat with the vegetables, so that the hair loss and the other things that we were talking about don't happen. So I just wanted to clarify that for people, because I just, again, I'm not, carnivores for everyone, ketos for everyone. It should be one particular way. And I'm sure that you have a lot of, people that are watching your videos that maybe they're not carnivore, maybe they've never even heard of it, and you're hearing like, what do you mean no vegetables, right? So again, it's up to what we can tolerate. And I just thought it was important to mention that.
Well, and are you a good converter? Because yes, there are absolutely vitamins and nutrients and minerals in plants. Can you access them?
Right.
I am a terrible converter. I cannot take those plant parts and change them over into parts that my animal parts can use. I am horrible at it. I end up with so many side effects, whether it be rashes or eczema or headaches or joint pain or you name it, if I eat almost any vegetables at all. The only thing I can handle is cauliflower, which is kind of interesting. But anyways, I digress. So, and I know some people who absolutely thrive on tons of veggies with no side effects whatsoever. My only concern is, are you getting in enough protein? Because if you fill up on a 7-cup salad, which is exactly what I would do, and you don't put any meat on top of it, you don't add any cheese, you don't add any eggs, you don't add to it to make sure that your protein is getting up high enough, and you don't convert those plant proteins well, then you're going to have problems down the road. And that is what I see more often than not, is that no one's getting enough protein when they're eating that many plants.
Definitely. And I will say, so one little hack for anyone who is still, eating plants like we're just talking about, is that if you, eat your meat protein first, or eat a portion of your meat protein first. It's something that I call macro sequencing. I've been using that with clients for a very long time. But that alone can be helpful, just to make sure that your body is recognizing that animal protein first.
Yes, I love that. So, one other question that I wanted to ask you about, which I know has really started to come out, you've been really focusing on it lately. You actually had breast implants, and they caused you just a few problems.
Yes, they did.
And you had them removed. So can you tell us that story?
So yes, I had breast implants. These used to be in my body. And what's crazy, as a little side note, is that they have deflated since they've been out of my body.
That
So,
kind of freaks me out a little bit,
okay,
honestly.
so do you see how it's kind of like a sack at the bottom and there's sort of like this top stuff, like it's like that?
Yeah.
This was filled fairly fuller, fairly full
Early fuller. Yeah.
when they removed the day that, when they removed them, and then for a couple weeks after. And then I hadn't taken them out for a little while, and I took them out a week or two ago to take some photos and noticed that they have, now there's no holes in them. These are saline, not silicone, but you can see, isn't
Hmm.
that crazy?
I wonder if some of that would have leached a little bit into your body. And yes.
Well, okay, so the saline, unless there was a leak, which I actually thought there was a leak in one of them, but there was not.
Yeah.
Um, the saline would not leach out if there was no puncture. However, the problem is that what the shell is made of is completely toxic. So that's the first problem, is that there's heavy metals and too many for me to list here. I have it in an Instagram post. If somebody wants to list look at all the chemicals that are leaching into their body if you do have implants and you're wondering if they're causing you problems. And the chemicals in the shells are the same with saline as they are with silicone. So just because, if saline leaks, yeah, it might be a little bit better for you than if silicone leaks. But you have to realize that saline implant shells are the same toxic substances that are with silicone, and that's what's leaching into the body.
That's just terrifying. It
I,
just really is. So how long did you have the implants before you had them removed?
okay, so I got the implants in 2012, and it, I'm not proud of it. And the reason I say that is because I have spent the last almost 15 years dedicating my life to helping other women get healthy. And I went and did something for vanity that I thought was fun. And I didn't do the research that I needed to do and should have done at that time. So, what I can say is do the research you don't want to do if it's something you're considering. I would never tell anyone not to get implants, but I would again say do the research you don't want to do and dig for things you don't want to find, so you know the absolute truth of both sides of the story before you choose to get them. That's number one. I started having symptoms 3 weeks after the surgery.
Hmm.
I blamed the anesthesia for the symptoms, not the implants themselves, not the fact that I put this foreign body into two of these foreign bodies into my body. And the one thing about when you put this object in the body, the scar tissue that the body starts to build around the implant is to protect the body from the implant. Ding, ding, ding. Light should have gone on, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, to try to make a long story short, again, I started having symptoms about 3 weeks later. I lived with the symptoms for many years. I was in denial that the implants caused the symptoms. And it was around 2018 where I really started thinking of like, these need to come out. And I also learned at that point that because the doctors don't tell you that these things need to be replaced every 10 years to keep them healthy. And at that point, I was like, well, I'm sure as heck not going to have surgery every 10 years to replace these. So that was sort of the beginning of figuring out and accepting, like, okay, I made a choice that wasn't the best choice, and I need to, change that.
And you have a story now to tell, and you can say, no, really, truly, there is more to the story than what you're being told. I wanted implants for years, and ever since I was a teenager, because I have always been very small chested. And of course, after losing 120 pounds, it left my chest first, because that's where our bodies always, our bodies are cruel like that. So I really, really, really wanted implants because I loved the way that my boobs looked when I was nursing my kids. That was what I wanted all of the time because they were perfect, you know, everything. And it just one thing after another would come up, and I couldn't justify it. I couldn't justify the expense or many, many reasons. And so now I am very, very grateful that I never got them. I was never able to. And now I'm trying to focus, especially with my girls, about loving my body the way that it is. And so I always make jokes about the fact that my boobs are always going to be facing the same direction and that they're never going to fall because they're not big enough to fall. So they're always going to stay exactly where they're supposed to.
Oh, I love that.
And they're going to look the same that they did when I was 14 as when I am like 94. And we laugh about it because they're small chested as well. And so I'm trying to really help them look at it in a new way of finding the positives of being small chested. I don't have back problems. I don't even have to wear a bra. I can wear a tank top and I'm good. And a lot more women are having their implants taken out.
Absolutely.
And so now I'm hoping that we start this whole new, you know, small chest movement and it'll take on and it'll be really cool.
Yeah, no, I love all of that. And I think for the young women out there, it's so important. What I want to actually mention, and part of, because we see so much autoimmune conditions, disorders, especially now, not just in the carnivore community, but it's rampant everywhere. And these can contribute to autoimmune problems. So in 2018, my thyroid antibodies were high, not too high, but they were about, I think they were in the 30s or 40s, which was not alarming, but definitely above normal. I mean, especially because I had been 100% gluten-free since 2008, and then low carb, and of course keto with some dessert type things for the few years before that, since 2006. So, you know, 10 years gluten-free, 10 years clean, 10 years grass-fed. I'm very much about clean source food and all of that. Yet still I had the antibody problem, you know, that started to peak its, you know, to rear its head, so to speak. So that was a little bit of a flag. Of course, I was still having a lot of digestive issues that were barely manageable. I spent thousands of dollars on acupuncture. I did all the functional testing that I know how to do. I mean, like, I really exhausted all the things. And then kind of fast forward a little bit, decided in 2020 that they needed to come out. And I think, ironically, not long before or after, I don't remember the exact timing, that I had more blood work. The thyroid antibodies were over 200. And I was like, thank goodness these things are going to come out.
Yeah. Dr. Barry's wife, Nisha, her Hashimoto's, she fully attributes that to coming about because of her implants. And I know that there's many other people out there who feel the same way, that it's doing stuff to you that we do not understand.
Yeah.
And a foreign object in your body is going to cause problems. And you know what? There may be some people that handle it just fine. Maybe their bodies are really good detoxers.
Yeah. And, you know, let's be real. I have a lot of friends that have never had any problems or external problems that we know about, right? We don't know what's going on the inside. So, you know, somebody asked me recently, like, do I regret getting them? And, you know, it's a double-edged sword, because of course, yes, be honest, I do regret getting them, but I wouldn't be able to share my experience and story with other women to be able to help them either decide not to get them or decide to remove them and watch them, you know, be able to help them watch their health flourish and help them detox and do all those things from them too. So it's a little bit of it's, you know, a catch-22.
Yep. That's my thing. It's like, I have a story. I suffered for you so that hopefully I can just save one person.
Right.
You know, and maybe, you know, many people make a decision not to get them that would not have been affected. but there's going to be people who make a decision not to get them that would have been affected.
Definitely.
And those are the
Absolutely.
people that it was worth it. Because, you know, whenever my kids get hurt or my kids get sick, I'm one of those people. I go, oh, I wish it was just me. You know, I wish I could take it on because I think I could handle it better. You know, and so it's like same thing. So I'm glad I'm the one that lost half of my hair.
Right.
And hopefully I can speak to that. I'm glad that I was hospitalized for mental health
Mm.
because I have a story and now I can share that and hopefully I can help one person. And I know that I've helped more than one person. So it's already worth it. So I completely agree with you. Yes, it was worth it. Did it suck? Yeah, it sucked.
Yeah. It was expensive.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was my biggest thing. I
Let me
couldn't,
save you a lot of money.
yeah, a lot of money, a lot of heartache, a lot of headache. Let's just
Yeah.
no, we're gonna start the small boob movement
Movement. Yes.
and we're gonna be good. So, well, I'm sure we could probably go on a whole lot longer.
Yeah.
This I so enjoy talking with you, and we end up just chatting forever. But I'm gonna ask you the final question that I
Sure.
ask everyone that comes on to my show, except for one. I forgot to ask Rebecca Bevins on the dye video about this question. I was like, oh no. Oh well, okay, I'll try to be diligent now. So, do you drink coffee? And if so, how do you take it?
Yes, I drink coffee. I drink organic cold brew. So I take it cold. I drink a really small amount. I actually cut out coffee for a very long time. It wasn't working for me a while back. I don't know if it was the type of coffee I was using, what was going on with my body at that point in time. You know, there's so many factors. The reason I added it back is because I do love coffee, and I've honestly, you know, cut out a lot of things from my own food supply, and I don't react from coffee. I drink a very small amount. I enjoy it every day, and yeah, I love it.
Do you put anything in it or you just drink it black?
I don't. I drink it black. I mean, if you know, I love cream. Like I'm one of those, you know, if I'm gonna drink it with cream, it's gonna be like tan color. Like you might not even be able to tell that it was ever actual coffee.
Yeah.
That's how much I love adding cream to coffee. But I do drink it, you know, earlier in the morning, and I'm fine with it black. I love the cold brew. It's not bitter, and it's just the right amount is about honestly it's like about a third a cup, and I add a little bit of water to it.
Yeah, I have to say, for people who want to keep coffee and who love coffee, organic coffee
Oh yeah.
is so
So
important.
yeah, so coffee and tea honestly is one of two of the foods that are the most contaminated with pesticides and fungicides in our food supply. And I will kind of just a little side caveat comment on the coffee thing because I get asked a lot, is coffee bad? Is coffee good? Right? I mean, you know, I'm sure you get asked that too.
Mhm.
And the thing with coffee being bad, I mean, I don't like to label things good or bad, but in the context of the person. So if somebody is very stressed out, has terrible adrenal health, has tons of thyroid issues, they're trying to heal their gut, and they can't sleep at night, and they're overly stressed, completely, you know, sympathetic, they live in that fight or flight mode, yes, coffee is bad. If someone is, you know, relaxed, not anxious, they're able to sleep at night, and they can manage their moods and stress throughout the day, then coffee is probably a little bit of coffee is probably going to be okay. But we have to remember coffee can affect our hormones, our gut function, healing, gut healing, if that's what you're trying to do. So just remember that, you know, if you're choosing between 1 cup or 5 cups, probably erring on the side of 1 cup is going to be better.
Yes. I remember hearing that I think coffee is like the third most sprayed crop in the
Yep.
world.
Mhm.
And so when I switched over, I do drink coffee and I take my own with me if I go anywhere. I do not drink anything from a restaurant. I won't drink it from a hotel. I always take my own and, you know, I'll just reheat whatever I have. Um, because I react so strongly to the herbicides and pesticides and fungicides. that I feel terrible if I drink just regular commercial coffee.
And I will say that if anyone travels and they're not at home, like, and not bringing coffee with is an option. The cold brew I drink, I actually found in an airport and researched them online and found out that they ship their cold brew, and that's how I learned about it. So there is a lot of organic, non-GMO coffee options out there. You just have to look for them.
Yes, being prepared and knowing what you're going to do on your trip or whatever it is makes a huge difference. So yeah, Richard just left on a trip with the kids and he took a whole carafe of coffee with
A
him.
lot of coffee.
And he's actually planning on quitting again.
After the trip, I'm sure.
After the trip, he's just not feeling. He went 44 years without coffee. He was never able to handle it. Gut healing needed to happen. And then he was finally able to drink it once his gut was all healed. And now he's going, he's like, now I'm addicted to it. He's like, I can't wake up without it. He's like, no, it's gotta go. It's all I can think about in the morning is the coffee. So no, it's gotta go. I feel so bad for him. I'm like, you finally have it. And I'm like, you never should have started. We should have just said no from the beginning, poor guy. But yeah, after the trip, he's going to stop with the coffee. But anyways, so by the time this goes up, he will be back or getting back that day. And we'll see if it lasted him the whole trip or not. My goodness. So to wrap up, where can people find you if they need help, if they want your services, if they just want to follow you? Where's the best place to do that?
So probably the best place to do that would be on Instagram, which is at carnivore.keto.fitness. I share a lot of information in my posts and try to answer a lot of Q&A in my stories and on lives every week or two. I do have a YouTube channel, but your best bet is Instagram. I sort of dusted it off after a few years last week or the week before. So it's in existence, but it's not super current. You'll find more current videos on Instagram. And I am also on Facebook as well. So.
And then I will link down below your information for people who want to hire you for your services.
My website, if I could say that, is nutritionthenaturalway.com. Yeah.
Okay. So I will link all of that down below so that if anyone needs to find you, they will know exactly. It'll be one click away. All they will have to do is do that. So I hope that everyone enjoyed this. And thank you so much again, Dani, for coming on. And we will have to do this again for sure.
Absolutely. Part 2. Thanks so much for having me, Amy. It was great.
Just a couple of bruised up souls that believe that it was worth one more try. With every star